Welcome to Night Creepypasta Rules, where survival depends not on strength or courage, but on whether you follow the rules. Rules that should never exist, and yet do. Tonight's story begins in the Appalachian Mountains, where a lone fire lookout climbs into a steel tower above the trees, expecting silence, solitude, and the occasional smoke report. Instead, they find a logbook filled with warnings, red eyes in the forest that never blink, and something that counts the stairs beneath them each night. There are 3 rules to staying alive at Crow's Peak, and by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly why those rules exist and what happens when someone breaks them. This is not just another scary story, it's a descent. Watch until the end to uncover a twist that redefines everything you've heard so far. And if you've ever felt something watching you from the woods, leave a comment below. Subscribe for more stories that don't just haunt your nights, they rewrite your reality. They tell you the hardest part of being a fire lookout is the isolation. The endless sea of trees stretching further than the eye can comprehend. They talk about loneliness like it's the primary occupational hazard. They don't tell you about the rules for when the trees look back. The final hike up to Crow's Peak Lookout was brutal. My pack digging into shoulders already sore from the long drive deep into the heart of the Appalachians. The air grew thinner, smelling sharply of pine needles and damp earth, carried on a wind that whispered through the dense canopy far below. Then the trees opened up, and there it was, a skeletal metal structure surmounted by a small cabin, perched impossibly high on the rocky summit, scraping the belly of the vast indifferent sky. My new home? My refuge, or perhaps my cage? Climbing the seemingly endless flights of metal stairs, the wind plucking at my clothes, the world shrinking beneath me into a dizzying panorama of folded green ridges. I felt a strange mix of vertigo and exhilaration. This was what I wanted. Distance. Solitude absolute enough to maybe finally quiet the noise inside my own head. The cabin at the top was Spartan. A cot, a small wood stove, a desk bolted to the floor, maps pinned to the walls, and windows everywhere, offering a breathtaking, terrifying 360-degree view. It felt like being suspended in a glass box at the top of the world. Finding the previous lookout's leavings didn't take long. Tucked in a dusty cupboard was a thick, worn logbook and a small box of cassette tapes, simply labeled L. Maxwell. Observations. Leo Maxwell. The name meant nothing to me then. Just a predecessor who, according to the sparse official handover notes, had left abruptly due to personal reasons. My first task was the radio check-in. Static hissed and crackled before resolving into a man's voice. Rough around the edges, but clear. Crow's Peak. This is base. Callahan responding. You made it then, Avery. Affirmative. Base. Callahan? It's Linden Avery. I've reached the tower. I'll seem secure. Trying to sound more competent than I felt. Good, Rory, Callahan's voice replied. There was a pause, the static filling the silence. All right, Avery. Settled in? Got the coffee maker figured out. Good. Now, listen up. Standard evening brief, plus orientation specifics for Crow's Peak. Non-negotiable. You copy. His tone shifted subtly, losing the earlier gruffness, becoming flat, precise. Rule 1, he began, the words stark against the background hiss. You'll be scanning the perimeter constantly, standard procedure. If, during your scans with the tower binoculars, you focus on something and realize you're looking at eyes staring back at you, could be miles away, doesn't matter. Do not blink. Hold its gaze until it looks away, or you look away first. Got it. I swallowed. Eyes? What kind of eyes? Doesn't matter. Callahan cut me off. Rule 2. The spotlight on the catwalk is for emergencies only. Fires, lost hikers. If you do use it, and you sweep it across the tree line below and see red eyes reflecting back, turn the spotlight off. Immediately. Don't investigate. Just kill the light. A chill traced its way down my spine. Red eyes, like an animal? Like nothing you need to worry about if you turn the light off, he retorted sharply. Rule 3. This tower is old. It creaks. You'll hear noises, but sometimes late at night you might hear footsteps on the stairs. Metal stairs, distinctive sound. You hear that, you count the steps, quietly. If you count more than 13 steps coming up, lock the hatch in the floor. Don't open it till sunrise, no matter what you hear. 13 steps. The cabin floor suddenly felt very thin beneath my boots. More than 13, I whispered into the mic. What is it? It's something that stopped after 13 steps if you want to see morning, Callahan said, his voice grim. Those are the rules, Avery. Specific to this tower. Non-negotiable. Learn them. Live them. Any questions? My mind reeled. This had to be some elaborate hazing for the new recruit, right? Appalachian folklore spun into a test? But the dead seriousness in Callahan's voice, the utter lack of humor, felt chillingly genuine. No, I said, my voice tight, no questions. Understood. Good. Standard check-ins every 3 hours. Don't miss one. Callahan out. The radio clicked back to static. The first night descended, painting the endless ridges in bruised purples and fiery oranges, before sinking into an impenetrable, star-dusted black. The silence was immense, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind around the cabin and the periodic creaks and groans of the tower settling beneath me. It felt less like solitude, more like being adrift on a dark, silent ocean. Later, when able to sleep, I pulled out Leo Maxwell's logbook. The early entries were mundane. Weather patterns, wind speeds, notes on repairing the stovepipe. Standard lookout fare. But further in, the handwriting grew more cramped, erratic. Strange sketches started appearing in the margins. Spirals, eye-like shapes. Figures made of jagged lines hidden between trees. Then I found the last few pages. Reports of strange lights, static bursts on the radio, unnerving descriptions of watching distant figures through the binoculars. The final entry, dated just over a month ago, was barely legible. The pen strokes deep and frantic. Oct 17. Constant now. It sees me. Through the glass. Doesn't matter how far. Rule 1 isn't enough. The rest of the page was ripped out, leaving only a ragged edge and a dark, ugly smudge that might have been ink, or perhaps something else entirely. Leo Maxwell's torn, frantic final entry left a residue of ice in the pit of my stomach. Rule 1 isn't enough. What did that mean? Driven by a nervous energy I couldn't suppress, I grabbed the heavy tower binoculars from their mount. Maybe seeing the vast, empty landscape in daylight would dispel the creeping dread. I started scanning the distant ridges, ridge after identical green ridge, following standard procedure, trying to focus on the routine. My gaze snagged on a patch of unusual shadow deep in a valley miles away, partially obscured by trees. Raising the magnification, I squinted, trying to make it out. The shadow resolved. It wasn't shadow, it was eyes, enormous, dark, ancient-looking eyes, nestled amongst the foliage, staring directly, unblinkingly, back at me. My breath hitched, heart slamming against my ribs. Rule 1. Don't blink. Raw panic screamed at me to look away, to drop the binoculars, but Callahan's dead serious voice and Leo's warning echoed louder. I froze, locking my gaze with that impossible stare, the binoculars suddenly feeling like lead weights in my hands. Tears welled, blurring my vision, my own eyes burning, begging for the release of a blink. The world narrowed to just that intense, intelligent, unreadable gaze across the miles. Seconds stretched into an eternity. It felt like a physical pressure, a silent interrogation. Just as I thought I couldn't hold on a second longer, that my eyes would betray me. The eyes across the valley simply weren't there anymore. The shadow was just a shadow again. I gasped, lowering the binoculars with trembling hands, blinking rapidly, tears streaming down my face. Shaken, I tore through Leo Maxwell's logbook again, searching for any mention of eyes, of being watched. I found more disturbing sketches. Eye shapes hidden in drawings of trees, a recurring spiral motif, and margin notes like it sees everything. The glass doesn't stop it, and watch it. When I radioed Rory Callahan later, trying to sound nonchalant while asking about Leah's specific reasons for leaving, his voice grew tight. Told you, Avery. Personal reasons. Couldn't handle the quiet. Drop it. The line crackled with static, louder than usual, and for a moment I thought I heard faint, layered whispering beneath the hiss before it cleared. That night, the mountain showed its teeth. A thunderstorm rolled in without warning, exploding across the peaks with terrifying violence. Wind screamed around the tower, shaking the metal structure like a dog with a rat. Rain hammered the windows. Lightning illuminated the vast, churning sea of trees in stark, momentary flashes. I felt incredibly small, incredibly exposed, trapped in my glass box swaying 100 feet above the ground. The power flickered, died, then sputtered back on thanks to a backup generator, plunging me into brief, terrifying moments of darkness where the wind sounded like something immense trying to claw its way inside. The storm passed as quickly as it arrived, leaving behind a dripping, unnervingly silent world. But the feeling of being watched was back, stronger now, more palpable. Every rustle of leaves, every distant snap of a twig sounded intentional. Was it the isolation finally getting to me? Or had the staring contest through the binoculars broken some unspoken truce? As I scanned the rain-washed darkness later, trying to calm my nerves, the powerful emergency spotlight mounted on the catwalk outside suddenly blazed to life, cutting a harsh white swathe across the dark, wet trees below. I hadn't touched the switch. The spotlight beam sliced through the night, unnaturally bright against the rain-darkened woods. Malfunction? Triggered by the storm. I fumbled for the switch inside the cabin that controlled it, intending to kill the power. As my hand reached the panel, the beam continued its slow, automatic sweep across the tree line, directly below the tower, and froze. 2 points of light ignited in the darkness, caught squarely in the center of the beam. Not the green-yellow reflection of a deer or coyote. These were large, perfectly round, glowing with an intense, steady red light. They didn't blink. They just stared up towards the tower, radiating a cold, malevolent intelligence. Rule 2. Turn off the spotlight. My fingers found the main breaker for the external lights and slammed it down. The spotlight died instantly, plunging the forest back into absolute darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs. I backed away from the windows, feeling exposed, suddenly understanding this wasn't just about seeing things. It was about not provoking what I saw. Sleep was impossible after that. I kept hearing things. Faint scratching sounds on the metal roof, a soft tapping against the glass panes, sounds that could have been the wind, or settling metal, or something else entirely. Looking out cautiously hours later, I saw strange lights, like distant lanterns or will-o'-the-wisps, moving slowly, deliberately, deep within the woods where no trails existed. And the next morning, after a thick fog had blanketed the peak then burned off, I found them at the base of the tower stairs. 3 small, smooth river stones placed carefully on the bottom step, arranged in a deliberate triangle, untouched by fog damp, as if placed there moments before. My isolation was broken mid-morning by the unexpected sound of someone hailing the tower from below. It was a man, lean, 40-something, dressed in practical hiking gear, looking up with a friendly smile. He introduced himself as Dr. Corbin Vale, a botanist apparently, studying rare lichen formations on the surrounding rock faces. His explanation felt plausible, yet his eyes were unnervingly sharp, taking in every detail of the tower, lingering a moment too long on the now dark spotlight. He asked about the storm, any unusual animal sightings. His questions casual, but oddly specific. Fascinating ecosystem up here, he commented, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Full of old secrets. Heard stories about the old lookout, Maxwell. Shame he left so suddenly. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Leo's log had indeed mentioned Dr. V, a researcher asking probing questions about atmospheric anomalies just weeks before his final entry. When I mentioned Dr. Vale's visit during my next radio check-in with Rory Callahan, the silence on the other end stretched for several seconds too long. Vale? Rory repeated, his voice strained. Corbin Vale? Oh, didn't know he was back in the area. You just stick to your duties, Avery. Report fires. That's it. Don't get distracted. He sounded rattled. That night, the silence felt heavier, more watchful than ever. I tried to lose myself in one of Leo's old cassette tapes. Crackly recordings of weather reports mixed with his increasingly agitated thoughts. Can't shake the feeling, his recorded voice whispered, layered with static. It knows I'm here. It knows I'm here. It knows I'm watching. Suddenly, his recorded voice was drowned out by a new sound. Sharp and clear in the present moment, coming not from the tape player, but from outside, below. Creak. Creak. Slow. Rhythmic. Undeniably heavy footsteps, starting up the metal stairs from the darkness at the base of the tower. Every muscle in my body went rigid. The creaking was slow, deliberate, each step echoing upwards through the tower's metal frame. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't settling metal. It was footsteps, heavy ones. Rule 3 slammed into my mind. Count them? My breath caught, listening intently, heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. 1, 2, the sounds agonizingly slow, measured. 3, 4, 5, climbing steadily higher. 6, 7, 8, halfway up now. Louder. 9, 10, 11, almost here. 12, 13. Silence. The footsteps stopped just below the trapdoor hatch set into the cabin floor. My only way in or out. Had it stopped? Was 13 the limit? I held my breath, straining to hear anything over the frantic drumming in my ears. Then, creak. 14. Ice flooded my veins. More than 13. I scrambled across the small cabin floor on hands and knees, fumbling with the heavy iron bolts securing the thick metal hatch. My fingers were clumsy with terror. 15. 16. The steps were right outside now, just beneath the floor. I slammed the final bolt home with a loud clang, just as something immensely heavy thudded hard against the underside of the hatch, making the whole cabin floor vibrate. Silence again. But it was a predatory silence now. I backed away from the hatch, pressing myself against the far wall, staring at the bolted metal square in the floor as if it might burst upwards at any moment. Did it know I was here? Could it sense me? What was it? I stayed like that for what felt like hours, adrenaline slowly fading, leaving behind a residue of cold, paralyzing fear. Nothing else happened. No more thuds, no scratching, just the moan of the wind outside and the frantic beating of my own heart. Morning arrived, shrouded in fog so thick it pressed against the cabin windows like a solid white wall, reducing my world to the 10 square feet of the room. Visibility. 0. The isolation was absolute, suffocating, and through the muffled silence, I heard them again. Creak, 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 footsteps ascending. I counted automatically, a cold dread gripping me. 10, 11, 12, 13. They stopped. This time they stopped at 13. Was it testing me? Playing with me? Or was it something different trying to get in now? The radio crackled, Rory trying to raise me, his voice barely penetrating the fog-induced static, asking for visibility reports I couldn't give. Trapped by the fog, unnerved by the footsteps, I turned back to Leo Maxwell's logbook, searching for anything, any clue. Tucked between pages near the end, I found a loose, folded note I'd missed before. It was in Leo's handwriting, but more hurried, desperate. Vale isn't who he says. Asks too much about the Watcher. Thinks it's a power source. He wants to provoke it. Don't trust him. Don't let him near the tower. The fog finally began to lift mid-afternoon, revealing a world washed in eerie gray light. And something new. On the outside of the window pane facing west, high up, were 5 distinct, oddly shaped handprints made of a sticky, translucent, resinous substance like pine sap, but clearer. They were far too high for any normal person to reach from the catwalk outside. My blood ran cold. It had been on the windows while I was trapped inside by the fog. Just before dusk, my radio crackled again. It was Rory, his voice tight with an urgency that superseded his usual gruffness. Avery. Got a smoke report confirmed. Section 7, moving fast. Looks bad. Winds picking up, shifting your way. Prepare for possible emergency evac. But Avery, listen to me. Orders are clear. You do not leave that tower until you get the direct word from me or ground crew arrives. No matter how close the fire gets, do you copy? The order felt insane, contradictory. A death sentence potentially overriding basic survival. Stay put while fire races towards you? Why? The sky bled orange. Smoke, thick and acrid, clawed my throat even inside the sealed cabin, stinging my eyes. Ash rained down like gray snow, dusting the windowsills. Miles away, yet terrifyingly close, the wildfire chewed through the forest. A roaring beast crowned with flame, driven relentlessly towards Crow's Peak by the shifting wind. Rory Callahan's insane order echoed in my ears. Stay put. Do not leave the tower. Trapped between the inferno outside and whatever haunted this peak. The entity, the Watcher, seemed to revel in the chaos. Through the swirling smoke, I scanned the perimeter with the binoculars, my hands slick with sweat. Ice. Not distant this time, but seemingly within the smoke itself. Multiple pairs. Vast and ancient, observing the destruction, observing me. I held my gaze until they dissolved back into the haze, my own eyes burning from smoke and strain. Red eyes flared brighter than embers deep within the woods below, ignoring the approaching flames and the footsteps. They started again, pounding up the stairs, faster this time, relentless, shaking the entire structure. 14, 15, 16, hammering against the underside of the bolted hatch like something desperate to escape the escape. 2 flames, or join me in my potential tomb. Then a voice hailed from below, impossibly close over the fire's roar. Avery! Linden Avery! Down here. I scrambled to the catwalk railing, peering through the choking smoke. Dr. Corbin Vale stood near the base of the tower, miraculously untouched by the nearby flames, gesturing frantically upwards. He had equipment with him now, strange antennae, a humming metal box. The fire's almost here, he yelled, his voice tight with an urgency that felt utterly false. The tower structure won't hold in this heat. You have to come down, now. Leo Maxwell's warning screamed in my head. Don't trust him, Rory's order, insana as it was, held me rooted. Radio orders are to stay put until instructed, I yelled back, coughing on the smoke. Vale's friendly academic mask slipped, replaced by feverish excitement. Orders? Don't be a fool. Callahan just follows protocols he doesn't understand. Don't you see? This is it. The fire. The fear. It draws the Watcher out. Concentrates its energy. I've studied Maxwell's logs. The local legends. It feeds on this. I just need to calibrate my equipment. Get clear readings when it fully manifests. He gestured wildly towards the smoke-choked woods. It needs a focal point. Avery, your terror. Up here, trapped. You're the perfect catalyst. Help me capture this phenomenon. He wasn't here to save me. He wanted to use me. Use the fire. Use my fear. Provoke the entity he supposedly studied. All for his obsessive research. Maybe he'd even help the fire along. The cold dread that washed over me was momentarily more chilling than the heat radiating from the approaching flames. Rory's order wasn't malice. It was a desperate, flawed protocol. The tower was some kind of shelter, a boundary, and Vale wanted me outside it. As if summoned by Vale's outburst, the atmosphere shifted. The roar of the fire seemed to warp, twisting into discordant whispers. The smoke thickened, coalescing into shifting, vaguely humanoid shapes with glowing red embers for eyes. The pounding beneath the hatch intensified, joined by frantic scratching sounds. The air grew thick, heavy, pressing in on me, making it hard to breathe. The Watcher wasn't just out there anymore. It felt like it was everywhere, pressing against the fragile reality of the tower itself. While I was frantically adjusting his humming equipment below, aiming antennae towards the cabin. Energy crackled visibly around his devices, and the pounding beneath the hatch grew impossibly loud, the metal groaning under the impacts. He was aggravating it, drawing its focus right here. Panic gave way to desperate action. I remembered Leo's notes, the rules, Callahan's seriousness. The tower was a boundary. Locking the hatch kept something out. Maybe the cabin itself offered protection Vale didn't have below. I scanned the cabin. Fire extinguisher, emergency flares, the heavy water tank on the roof for dousing embers. No, I wouldn't be his catalyst. I grabbed a signal flare gun from the emergency kit. Leaning over the catwalk railing, through the swirling embers and choking smoke, I aimed. Not at the entity I couldn't fully see, but at Vale's humming equipment. I fired. The flare hit the metal box with a bright magnesium flash and a shower of sparks. Vale cried out in rage and surprise. The equipment sputtered, energy crackling erratically before dying with a loud pop. The immediate, intense pressure around the tower lessened slightly, the pounding beneath the hatch faltering for a second. But the Watcher, its attention now fully drawn, perhaps angered by the interference, seemed to coalesce in the smoke directly before me on the catwalk. Not a solid form, but a vast, towering shape of shadow, heat haze, and burning embers. Impossibly tall, with those ancient, unblinking eyes locking onto mine. Rule 1, don't blink. I met its gaze, smoke stinging my eyes, heat searing my skin. Behind the entity, through the swirling chaos, I saw Vale scrambling away from his damaged equipment, his face contorted in fury, starting towards the stairs, maybe intending to force me down. The footsteps started again, inside my head now, pounding relentlessly. 13, 14, 15, echoing the entity's approach, or perhaps something else trying to break through from within. The metal structure of the tower groaned under the immense heat of the fire, now licking at the base supports. Then, an idea. Desperate. Suicidal, maybe. The water tank. If I released it now, while still holding the Watcher's impossible gaze, fumbling with my good hand, I found the emergency release valve for the rooftop water tank. With a final surge of adrenaline, I yanked it open. Tones of water cascaded down, not just dousing the cabin roof, but creating an immense cloud of steam as it hit the superheated metal of the catwalk and the air around the entity. The Watcher recoiled, its form momentarily disrupted by the deluge, letting out a deafening psychic shriek that felt like tearing ice in my skull. Through the steam and chaos, I saw Vale, caught halfway up the stairs by the unexpected flood, lose his footing on the slick metal, He screamed as he tumbled backwards into the smoke and fire below. The immediate presence of the Watcher dissipated with the steam, but the fire raged on. The tower shuddered violently, metal shrieking in protest. I stumbled back from the railing, collapsing onto the cabin floor, gasping for air, my eyes burning. The hatch remained bolted. The fire burned below. I was alive, alone, trapped in the heart of the inferno. The Watcher momentarily gone, but the mountain itself felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. The world outside the cabin windows slowly swam back into focus through a haze of smoke and pain. The roaring inferno that had threatened to consume Crow's Peak had moved on, leaving behind a scarred landscape of blackened trees and smoldering earth under a sky choked with gray dawn. The immediate, overwhelming heat had lessened, replaced by an eerie, unnatural silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of dying embers below, and the groan of the heat-stressed tower. My shoulder screamed where I had wrenched it using the water valve. My lungs burned with inhaled smoke, and minor burns dotted my arms. But I was alive, alone. I cautiously peered over the catwalk railing. The stairs were still intact, though warped and blackened. Below, the ground was a mess of ash, steaming debris, and the charred remnants of Dr. Corbin Vale's equipment, shattered by the falling tree section. I hadn't even registered hitting near the base during the chaos. Of Vale himself, there was no sign. Consumed by the fire? Taken by the Watcher during that moment of watery disruption? It didn't matter. He was gone. The weight of his revelation settled heavily in the smoky air. A researcher driven to madness, willing to sacrifice me to provoke an ancient entity. And Rory, his orders hadn't been malicious, just protocol. A desperate generations-old attempt to manage the unmanageable. Keep the Watcher contained within boundaries, defined by bizarre rules, even at the potential cost of the lookout. The thought left a bitter taste, colder than the morning air. Descending the warp stairs later, when the immediate structure seemed stable, I found Vale's ruined instruments amongst the ashes. A shattered lens, melted wires, and a scorched notebook, its pages mostly fused together by heat and water. One partially legible page survived, filled with obsessive notes about bioresonant frequencies, capturing psychic echoes, and sketches of the spiral symbol matching Leo Maxwell's and Jedediah Croft's charm. Confirmation of his dangerous obsession. Back in the relative safety of the cabin, the silence pressed in. The forest outside, usually alive with birdsong and rustling life, was utterly still, unnaturally quiet, even for a post-fire landscape. It felt watchful. As dusk fell again, painting the smoke-hazed sky in lurid colors, I scanned the distant, unburnt ridges through the binoculars out of ingrained habit. No eyes met mine this time, but the feeling of being observed was a palpable presence, a weight against my skin. Later, I could have sworn I saw a single pair of red eyes glowing faintly for just a moment, miles away, before vanishing. The Watcher was still out there, biding its time. My priority became the radio, the storm, the fire, the chaos. Something had damaged it beyond simple static. Days blurred into a cycle of rationing dwindling supplies, tending my injuries, and painstakingly working on the radio's scorched internals with the few tools available. The isolation felt different now. Not just lonely, but profoundly significant. As if my presence here, my survival, mattered in some cosmic balance I didn't understand. On the third day, splicing wires with trembling fingers, I finally got a flicker of life, a burst of static, then unbelievably, a voice, faint, broken, layered with interference, but recognizable from the old cassette tapes. Leo Maxwell. Not fire you need to fear, the voice whispered, distorted. Always here. Not gone. Between the trees, always watching. Then the radio died again, definitively this time, leaving only silence and the chilling echo of the previous lookout's warning from beyond whatever fate had befallen him. Rescue arrived 2 days later, heralded by the distant chop-chop-chop of a helicopter. Rory Callahan was aboard, his face grim, etched with a mixture of relief and apprehension when he saw me alive amidst the tower's damage. He didn't ask many questions, just assessed the situation, his eyes lingering on the scorched earth, the ruined equipment I pointed out, the bolted hatch. He heard my report, the fire, Val's appearance, his insane plan, the entity's manifestation, with a heavy silence, occasionally nodding as if confirming things he already suspected or knew from handed-down lore. "Val was warned," he said finally, his voice low, rough. "Some places, some things, you don't poke at 'em." He thought he could control it. He looked at me, his gaze searching. "This tower, it stood for 80 years, seen fires, storms, worse. There are reasons for the rules, Avery. Reasons for the watch. They offered me immediate evacuation, a transfer, medical leave. The logical part of me screamed to accept, to run as far from this haunted peak as possible. But as I stood on the catwalk, looking out at the vast, silent wilderness beginning the slow process of recovery, something held me back. The memory of the Watcher's gaze, the weight of Leo's final message, Rory's resigned confirmation of something ancient and aware residing here. It wasn't just a job anymore. "I'm staying," I heard myself say, the words feeling strangely inevitable. "To finish the season at least. Someone needs to keep watch." Rory stared at me for a long moment, then gave a slow, weary nod. "All right, Avery. If that's your choice, we'll get supplies up to you, arrange repairs." He didn't try to argue. Maybe he understood. Or maybe he was just relieved the cycle wouldn't be broken, that someone else was willing to bear the burden. Time passed. The forest began its slow recovery, green shoots pushing through the ash. The tower was repaired. Supplies restocked. The world beyond the mountains continued on, oblivious. But my world had contracted, focused onto this peak, this view, this silent duty. The fear hadn't entirely vanished, but it had changed, transmuted into a kind of wary understanding, a grim acceptance. I still followed the rules. When scanning the horizon, sometimes miles away, sometimes unnervingly close in the swirling morning mist, the eyes would appear in the binoculars, ancient, intelligent, filled with an awareness that transcended human understanding. Now, I held their gaze without flinching, without the burning panic, until they withdrew, a silent acknowledgement. "I see you. You see me." When the red eyes glowed from the tree line on moonless nights, I calmly turned off any external lights, respecting their nocturnal passage. When the footsteps climbed the stairs, sometimes 13, sometimes more, I counted, bolting the hatch when necessary, listening to the silence or the scratching below, without the paralyzing terror I'd felt before. It was a balance, a fragile, terrifying truce. I was the lookout, the watcher on the peak. My isolation was no longer an escape, but a function. I kept watch over the forest, over the fire, and over the ancient thing that resided within it. And in turn, I knew with absolute certainty, it continued to watch me. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying secrets older than time, and the silence held its breath, waiting. The watch remained. That was Crow's Peak, a tower built to watch for fires, now standing as a thin, trembling line between our world and something ancient that watches back. The fire passed, the footsteps stopped, but the eyes remain. And the watcher? It's patient. It doesn't forget. The rules weren't made to protect the lookout. They were made to contain what lives beneath the trees. If you made it this far, tell us in the comments. Which of the 3 rules would you have broken first? And if you're brave, or foolish enough, subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules. Because next time it might not be a tower. Next time it might be your street, your window, your breath in the dark. And next time there may not be rules to save you,